This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
Yeah, but you're not a psycho. You do know some, though, don't you, Doc?
Yes, of course. I do some work at Bellevue.
Hey, could she have met one of these nuts at your office? I mean, some kind of weirdo she could have turned on that might have followed her?
The term we use, Detective Marino, is not weirdo, but a person suffering from emotional dysfunction and a problem of maladaptation. And they never come to my office. Now, what makes you such an expert?
Because I'm a hooker.
Ah.
And I've done most of the bad things you just read about.
Do you like doing these things?
Sometimes.
What do you like about it?
I like to turn men on. I must do a pretty good job because they pay me a lot.
Are you sexually attracted to me?
Yes. Are you?
Attracted to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How about some sexual assistance? Do you want to fuck me?
Oh, yes.
Well, why don't you?
Because I'm a doctor and
Fucked a lot of doctors.
I'm married.
Fucked a lot of them, too.
Don't you think we're getting off the point?
There's some men and women, too, who think they're born in the wrong body. They're called transsexuals. And all I want to do is have their sex changed.
How do you do that?
Well, if you're a man that wants to become a woman, you take female hormones.
What do they do?
Well, your skin softens, you grow breasts, and you don't get hard anymore.
I thought Ellie just put on a dress.
Oh, he did, and a wig, too. But you see, that's no good in bed when you gotta take everything off.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast in our month of Clothes Makes the Killer. Today we'll be covering Homicidal and Dress to Kill. And before we get started, we'll have an introduction of the people we have with us today. We have Vicky Ray with us today.
Hi, everyone.
And John Wilson.
Hello.
Who are regular co-hosts. And we have Matthew Bruckmeyer, the author of Kinda Pithy, who has just won a Maxie Award.
Hello. Hi.
And we got a Steam author, Will Millar, whose book Infernal Machines has been out, and his new book, Children of Judas, is available as well. So before we get started, let's talk about what we've been up to. So, Matthew, what have you been up to?
Oh, geez. Life, being a dad, trying to make a living. But I'm working on a new novel, and I got a number of short stories that are going to be out in anthologies soon. A Christmas horror story that's in a Christmas horror anthology, and a bunch of other stuff.
What about yourself, Will? What have you been up to?
I just, as you were really cool to mention, I just released The Children of Judas earlier this year. This is my second book. I released it in 3 parts on Amazon. I'm kind of playing with, what it means to just be an author in the 21st century. There's a lot of stuff that's changing. And so this book was in development for a number of years, and it took a couple of hits as some things went up and down with publishing houses and stuff. So I was just really happy to be able to release it in a way that Keith, you put me in touch with some really great editors back when we were working together over the years, so I had a lot of really good people looking at it, and I was able to just get it out on my own terms, and I'm just so happy about that. If you want, you can check it out on Amazon now. Just look for The Children of Judas and look for me. That's Will Millar.
And what about yourself, John? What have you been up to?
I've been catching up on season 2 of Westworld. I realized I hadn't finished it. I got like halfway through and I hadn't finished, so it's great. It's totally mind-bender, Matrix-y in some ways. I'm also just gearing up for the fall season, which all the programming's coming back. So my DVR is actually going to explode with all the different series, Flash, Arrow, Supergirl. And I just saw the new trailer for The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is coming out on Netflix October 26th. So that looks so freaking good. It's very dark and very wicked. So check it out.
And what about yourself, Vicky? What have you been up to?
I'm just trying to get back in the groove of things since I got home from visiting New York, and just been trying to catch up things around the house, getting Asher ready to go BMXing. He's at the motocross stuff down the road right now. My daughter's here visiting right now because they had a little bit of an apartment fire. Everybody's okay, but it was really inconvenient for everyone. But other than that, I've been got hooked on this new show because of my best friend Jill. It's called Wentworth. It's like a takeoff of Prisoner Cell Block H or whatever kind of, but it's in Australia, and it's just like super badass. I just can't stop watching it. It's really good. Highly suggest it.
Yeah, I'm watching that as well. Lesbians and more. Yes.
You know it.
And didn't you also go see the Scorpions, which you actually bought your tickets through www.seatgiant.com and got your 20% discount through LL Podcast. So how was
and the rain held off just for me and Nez. It was excellent.
And myself, I started watching The Purge. I'm into episode 2, which I'm really enjoying, actually. That's quite good. I, too, am watching Wentworth because Vicky's lesbian friend, Jill, got me into it when I was in upstate New York. So I'm fully into that. And then I'm also watching America's Got Talent, which is taking forever to freaking finish. But
I like the UK's Got Talent. They have some really out there shit.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens after Brexit, what kind of talent we do have left, because most of them were bloody European on there. So before we go any further, what I'm going to do is Matthew Brockmeyer's and Will Millar's book information will be on our website and will be purchased in our newsletter. And again, if you're going to want to win one of our one-of-a-kind T-shirts, if you sign up at www.llpodcast.com and subscribe to our newsletter, you could be one of a winner of one of these great shirts that are especially made for us and part of our Season 1 T-shirts. So to no ado, we're now to go to the Forming the Plot segment of our podcast. And our first film we're covering is Homicidal, which was directed by William Castle. Now, the interesting thing is, you might wonder how Homicidal and Psycho in this whole month ties into one theme, is that the reason why Alfred Hitchcock did Psycho, because he was a big fan of William Castle. And so he made Psycho in the tradition of a William Castle film and a low-budget film and put his own spin on it. What William Castle did to thank Alfred Hitchcock for the recognition for Psycho, he did Homicidal. And Homicidal is an interesting piece. It was a big box office blockbuster. And the great thing about William Castle is that he had a knack for basically being able to put his own spin on films. And he did a lot of things with gimmicks. And if you do watch Homicidal, if you watch the Blu-ray or the DVD disc, or even if you rent it, you'll notice that there's a fear break in it.
Yeah.
He did these kind of gimmicks through all his kind of films. And the great thing about William Castle is he made some fantastic films. He did The House of Haunted Hill, The Tingler, Mr. Sardonicus, 13 Ghosts. And he's actually been very influential in a lot of directors like Robert Zemeckis and people like that. One of William Castle that a lot of people don't know is that if it wasn't for him, we would never have Rosemary's Baby. He was the producer of that. And John, do you have any more information about Homicidal?
I mean, this is a fairly new movie. Excuse me, a new movie for me because I never had seen this. I think I could definitely see the nod that he was trying to give to Hitchcock with the way, the stylistic of it, the approach of it. I think it's interesting that the movie, I wasn't sure how much the movie had made. I'm assuming it did pretty well because it mentioned something about that fear break and how that actually boosted sales because people came to see it for that reason too, to get that heart throbbing sort of like pounding moment to push them past their limit. So that actually worked. That gimmick sort of worked during that time.
But he shamed people into staying though.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
So they would go back and get their money.
Yeah, and it's at only a few, like, went back and got a rebate, basically.
1%.
What about you, Matthew? Do you have anything you want to add about the making of Homicidal?
There's some great shots. That shot where she's up in the wheelchair and her head topples off, man, that was amazing. I put a fear warning in there.
Yeah, I mean, anytime anyone gets their head cut off is a major thing in cinema. I always enjoy it.
Especially for back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it did push some boundaries. What about yourself, Will?
Oh my goodness. I went into a whole huge William Castle deep dive a couple of years ago, and this guy is so cool. He was actually Bela Lugosi's protege. So this is totally true. When Bela Lugosi was doing like Broadway tours for Dracula, he went into William Castle's hometown and, did the play, and Castle went nuts and went back and saw the play every day for 2 weeks and followed, like, as a kid, figured out ways to follow Bela Lugosi around and just, he wouldn't leave him alone. And so Bela Lugosi taught him like stagecraft and also like just a whole lot of just tricks of the trade for developing, good stage horror, which Castle then went and did these amazing like screen horror productions. Everything he did kind of looks like a funhouse,
That's a good description, actually, a funhouse.
Yeah, he definitely did that, and I think that with Homicidal, one of the brilliant things he did was casting Joan Marshall, who he gave the name Jean Arliss. So he's got this actress who no one's seen before, and she just swings for the fences with that performance. She just looks very rigid, and there's something wrong with her the whole time, and he kind of coaxed that out of her in a way that he does a few years later when he's working with Marcel Marceau. I don't know if you guys know, he did the movie with the French mime. It was another sort of thriller, very much in this same vein, and there's a lot of parallels between the two. It's really cool.
Oh, cool.
What about you, Vicky? Anything you want to say about the making of Homicidal?
Well, I mean, I've never heard of the fright break before, so I thought that was kind of genius, to actually, would want to make you want to stay in there to watch the movie for one. But when he came up with the Coward's Corner, with the cardboard booth, and if you decided to leave, you would have to take the walk of shame so you could get your money back.
It's like throw popcorn at them.
But I mean, that's like unheard of, and I've never heard of that before. So I mean, like I said, that was like pure genius, actually. And that's the one thing. He did
all kinds of weird stuff like that. He would put a little electricity in the seat for the tingler.
Yeah.
Drop down skeletons out of the ceiling and stuff like that. He was really well known for gimmicks.
It's funny because if you think of during that time, that's like he was creating the 4D experience, where now it's like there are some theaters that have been adjusted to do like spray water in your face, or the same thing like the tingle of the seats and things like that.
For sure. Funny thing about the Tingler, they actually, about the joy buzzers that they hooked under the seats, those were actually something called, like I said, I did this whole research deep dive into William Castle, and the buzzers were actually, the exact term for this was military surplus vibrators.
Where do I get one?
Exactly. I don't know what the military was doing with vibrators, but they must have been something. Also, The Tingler is the first movie ever shot where a character takes LSD on screen. And that first actor to do that was Vincent Price, which I also think is just really cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Factoid.
Well, Vincent Price is a god in my book.
The best.
So good.
Now, the one thing to be interested about Homicidal before we go into synopsis is that when it came out, the Time magazine basically said it was an imitation of Hitchcock's Psycho, but it surpassed it in model and structure, suspense, and sheer nervous drive, which is quite interesting that critics actually preferred Homicidal over Psycho, though Psycho would, of course, get its critical kudos later on, but on this first release, a lot of critics were very happy with it. But they actually put a lot of praise on Homicidal, so I'm not quite sure if that was to stick two fingers up at Alfred Hitchcock or it was actual praise for Homicidal. So before we get into the meats and bones of Homicidal, Vicky, want to give us a brief synopsis of the film Homicidal?
Homicidal is a 1961 American horror thriller film produced and directed by William Castle, who we discussed, and it starred Glenn Corbett, Patricia Breslin, Eugenie Leontovich, did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Alan Bunce, and Jean Arliss. The film follows a murderous woman in a small California town whose presence unearths secrets covering a prominent local family.
So before we go into the discussion of Homicidal, we're going to cut to a commercial break and the film trailer for Homicidal. Be right back.
Let's play a game. I will ask you yes or no questions. Ready? Do you have a rocking chair to relax on? Do you have space to store your toddler's toys if an unexpected guest came over? Can you lay down comfortably on your couch? If your answer is no to one or more of these questions, then you need the new IKEA catalog. Visit IKEA at Cairo Festival City and get your free copy. Enjoy 1,000 new ideas and more than 2,000 new lower prices. IKEA 2018 catalog. Make room for life.
IKEA.
Do you remember the only argument we ever had? It was over this.
How you howled when I swiped it from you.
And you never gave it back to me either.
We interrupt this program to bring you a police bulletin. Justice of the Peace Abrams was murdered in his home in Ventura tonight by a young woman who... Approach her with extreme caution as she is considered to be homicidal.
Nowadays, people seem to hate more.
Is there any way to tell?
Tell what, Carl?
Well, if a person's homicidal.
No, that's what makes them so dangerous. They can change from being a friend into your murderer in a second's time. Anyone in mind, Carl?
Just asking.
2 days I'll be 21, and that means I'll be coming into roughly $10 million.
That's a lot of money.
That's a cheap price for being his son. You know, if I die before my birthday, you get all the loot.
We all hate to a certain extent, but it's only when hate is dammed up that it breaks out in murder.
What happened? Who made the mess in the shop?
That's what I'd like to know.
I think you're afraid of me, Robert. You wouldn't want me to go away, would you? Leave you all alone?
You seen this?
You would dry up and die! If you stay in this house one more minute, I'm going to kill you.
We had a murder down at Ventura the other day.
What has that got to do with me?
She used the name Miriam Webster.
What? What were you doing in my room last night? You better see a doctor, dear. You're imagining things.
Anybody could kill that didn't have an outlet for their hate.
You must have somebody in mind, Carl. Who is it?
We think that Emily murdered Alfred Abrams. That's a rotten, filthy thing to say, Carl.
Where are you going? To see Warren?
Helga's all alone in the house with Emily. I can take care of myself. Somebody doesn't like you. Seems that way. Do you think Emily is a cold-blooded murderess? Miriam, answer me.
I don't know, Warren.
I'm right here, Miriam.
And welcome back. So, in our next segment, Page to Page, Will Millar is going to start us on the discussion of the film Homicidal.
Oh my goodness. So are we just talking about the cold open here, or what's going on?
You can talk about anything you want to about the whole film.
I think that one of the amazing things about it is just how gory it is almost right off the bat. One of the interesting things he does is, you've got that build and build. You're not exactly sure what's going on with Jean Arliss. She looks very strange, and all the way up until that. Yeah, he really, I would say he got the performance of a lifetime out of her with that, and just to the point where she disembowels that judge. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of movies that had that sort of graphic scene at that time, except for a couple of gangster movies, but in that very focused way like that. Was that the bloodiest scene that you guys have seen in that sort of era, right around 1960, 61?
I mean, I didn't expect it. I did not expect that at all. Because I kind of was like, what is going on? And why is she being so weird? And at one point, it was like even the money thing with the bellboy. Was it Richard Russ or yeah. Or no, Jim. Sorry. Yeah. So Jim. So the bellboy, it was a little weird. And then when that happened, I was like, and we just turned a corner. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And what is going on? And then she just took the car and she's like, and I'm gone. Bye.
And no, it's just the look on her eyes. Did you see the look? And then the close-ups, they're going the in and out, just like, oh, fuck.
Part of it was like a revenge thing. Was she trying to get revenge? Because the way she looks at the guy, because I think even the minister like touched her and it was like set her off.
He was trying to kiss her. He goes, I want to kiss the bride.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I want to kiss the bride. Yeah. Meanwhile, the wife is like playing on the organ, like, get your hands off him.
They remind me of a real life version of the Lockhorns.
Oh yeah.
I mean, what I found quite interesting is the beginning of it where you got the two kids and the boy comes in, well, I guess is Warren, taking away the doll. Yeah. Dario Argento would actually use that scene in his own version of Deep Red or Profumo Rosso, which is almost the same opening, which is quite interesting. So actually Dario Argento must have been a fan of this film as well. So, but after
could you just not get past what that kid looked like, though?
Oh, the boy? I know. He was creepy looking. And then also, didn't you notice that the window, the way that was shot, it looked very huge nod for Psycho, that open window, the window that green is, like, it had the same look. And I was like, is that intentional? I'm like, yes, it must be.
Well, I mean, the whole layout of the film is quite interesting. I mean, it did push a lot of boundaries at that time. I mean, you have the whole transvestite-ism that's going on through the film, carrying it through, though you're not quite sure until the very end. But, I mean, he did very good with the whole smoke and mirrors sort of situation. That it was, I mean, I've seen this multiple times, and, this time I watched it a bit more with a critical eye. And it's like, there's no way that you would know that Warren, spoiler alert, by the way, that Warren and Emily are the same person. He did that very, very cleverly.
And they're dating each other, so there's something more complexity to that situation.
I was just waiting for the dueling banjos theme to start, actually, when I seen Warren's first take.
It's what's weird is, like, I definitely, the teeth and the voiceover threw me off. And I think that Joan did a better job playing a woman pretending to be a woman.
Pretending to be a man.
Pretending to be a woman, because she did a good job as that, pretending to be a woman. It was like, that was good. But then when it was her pretending to be a man, it was off for me. And that's what, like, oh, okay, now I see. Because I knew there was something awkward about Emily, but I didn't know what it was. But the moment I saw Warren, I was like, and what's with the teeth? Like, it's weird. Like, what teeth? Like,
I know. It was like, I couldn't stop looking. I go, what the hell's Keith got me watching? The first 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then I was like, how does a sister not see the difference? I'm sorry. Like, unless you're just really estranged from your family, but how does Miriam not look at Boo and be like, yeah, something's different. Like, what's going on here?
The little girl's character of Miriam, I'm just sitting there and she's crying, it's mine,
Yeah.
It's just like.
Well, I mean, the funny thing about it is that Emily as Warren kind of looked like one of those butch lesbians that you see at a gay bar called Pussy Licks or something. I mean, she did kind of have that kind of look about her, which I have to admit that as a boy, I think she did a very good job, but there was a bit of woodenness when she was playing the boy that you didn't actually get when she was playing Emily.
Yeah, I got when you say woodenness, I thought of Pinocchio. Like, it was this weird sort of like, I just didn't get the teeth. I mean, that's what
I know, it's the teeth.
Why? What's with the false teeth? Like, I didn't get that.
Stop looking, and it's just like the kid was the strangest looking, genetics gone wrong kind of thing. I mean, I was like, what is with this kid? I've never seen such an ugly child.
Ron, I think what you said is really interesting about the performance that she gives as being wooden and whatnot, because if you look at like a lot of William Castle's stuff over the years, like marionettes are something he keeps going back to, like the big skeleton coming out of the vat in House on Haunted Hill. I know you guys did the House on Haunted Hill episode, right?
Yeah.
And so, the big reveal, the skeleton coming out of that, it's very marionette-like. And then, Joan Marshall is sort of marionette-like. And then, again, going back to that Marcel Marceau movie that he does, I can't remember the name of that one, but if you guys Google William Castle and then Marcel Marceau, it is one of the creepiest things ever. But, yeah, it seems like that's a thing that he does a lot, which is just really cool.
Mm. Well, even 13 Ghosts had a bit of a puppeteer thing going on when you put on the special.
Yes.
I had to sit there and say kudos to the aunt. I mean, she had no lines, but she sure knew how to hit that little knocker thing, didn't she?
And I was like, why would she not like write a note and be like, help me, dear God, help me?
It's like, stick a sign in his face, help me, But I mean, even the look of imploring on her face, if I was somebody and I was looking at someone that was mute and was imploring me like that, I probably would have, been a little more curious as to what was going on, because clearly the woman was terrified.
Yeah.
And the guy just says, oh, well,
I mean, to throw caution to the wind, though, it was quite interesting that when the aunt's story comes out, was she the aunt or a nanny? I wasn't quite sure what her...
I think it was the aunts.
It was the aunts. But the thing is that apparently she was quite cruel.
Yes, she was.
Apparently, she, Warren, the father used to beat Warren, because he got that whip out with the riding crop, and she used to just stand by and just watch it happen. She never really, and then she's part of the whole charade thing that happened as well. So
and all that exposition, by the way, happens when, brother and sister are just there, reminiscing about good times. Oh, no, it's not good times. He pulls out the switch. And he's like, remember when she used to hit me with this? Oh, yeah, I totally remember that. That was like, what the hell is happening here? Like, they're like reminiscing, and all of a sudden it turns into, and then she tortured me. It's like, whoa.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking that maybe, going back to the teeth, I'm thinking that maybe because they go to Switzerland for a few years, where then they come back because she has a stroke, and maybe she got her teeth fixed, and that's the reason why she puts the false teeth in for Warren, because he got his teeth fixed over there.
Maybe. I just think it was a little confusing. I mean, maybe it was just me. It was a little confusing on like who was who and who was what, and I had to like kind of watch certain things over because I'm like, am I missing something? I was like, oh yeah, I missed that. Okay, now that's his sister, because the roles were kind of not defined until I think midway, and I was like, oh, that's the sister, and then that, oh, okay, because it got a little confusing for me. And then even in the end, when it sort of is the reveal happens, I was like, was Warren pretending to be Emily, or like Emily pretending to be Warren? I mean, it was like really confusing.
I think that was half the point of what he was trying to get across. But even adult Warren, he was kind of a dweeb as well. I mean, just just looking. It was the teeth.
Yeah.
And then the lip, the voiceover. Dubbing the voice in. And you notice how they made sure that he was turned around a lot so they didn't have to probably do the dubbing in so much. I noticed they always showed the back of him a lot as well.
One of my favorites when they do that is when Emily has Miriam and he's like, Warren, she's like, Warren, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm right here. She's like, what the? Oh my God! Literally, it's like, oh wait, Warren's literally holding me right now, but it's Emily. Oh, okay, dun dun dun.
Yeah.
Well, I like it when Miriam's sleeping and she like wakes up and there's Emily staring at her. and the next morning she goes,
doll, right? Isn't she ever doll? She's like stroking it.
With that doll, she had the doll in her hand.
Yeah. Oh.
But I think the best thing is, like when you're a child, if something happens, you get caught, you just deny it. And obviously Emily learned that because it's like, so Miriam goes, oh, why were you in my room last night? I wasn't in your room.
Must have been dreaming.
Exactly.
And then Miriam goes into her bedroom and like sees like Emily getting in bed with Warren.
That was a creepy, weird scene, though. That was, and then, I was worried about you, dear. I thought that was a really weird scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it does have its, flashback to like Psycho when, Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates talks with his mother's voice, isn't it? So I guess they're throwing the thing back and forth.
True.
With a nod to that. But, Emily is very off kilter, and it'd be just kind of weird that there's nothing about Emily that was normal. You know what I mean? This is like, whenever she comes in contact with anyone, even when she's flirting with the soda jerk guy, what was his name? The one that Miriam got the hots for. Carl. And
Carl Anderson. Mm-hmm.
She's like flirting with Carl, but there's still kind of like a psychotic flirting going on. This is like,
yeah,
I'll go to the picnic with you. No, that's okay.
Yeah. And it's like every time
I rather work.
Sisters mention, she just like you could just tell she's just like Miriam. I'm better than Miriam. I mean, one of the best scenes is when she like just literally destroys the florist shop and she just goes on
tearing the heads off the dolls.
God.
And when she goes, and then I love it when Emily goes, Warren bought that shop for you, didn't he? It's like, Warren done this for you, didn't he?
Yeah. Why doesn't he just buy another one for you, right?
She kind of reminded me of the little girl in The Innocents.
Oh, yeah. What's her name? Oh, my God. Oh, yeah.
Flora.
Oh, yeah.
I was waiting for her to say, I'll give you a basket of kisses.
Yeah.
Rhoda.
I think we have a common theme here. We got some Rhoda type-esque characters here involved. The one thing that was consistent with Emily was like her primness too. Like, so everything was like meticulously about her, the way she dressed and so that I thought was very interesting.
I mean, I think the only clunky thing I found with this, and when we cover Just to Kill, it gets clunky there as well, and in Psycho it's clunky as well, but when they tried to put a psychological analysis on what you just seen, and it gets really clunky. It's like it doesn't make sense, sorry.
That's what I mean, is it was very confusing because when that person comes in, the doctor comes in, his analysis of it, I'm like, what? I'm like, what? I'm like, I was so confused. What just happened?
That movie was a little confusing. You really had to follow it because it had so much back and forth, and it's just like,
Well, I mean, the inheritance helped, that storyline helped, because even that, I was like, well, okay, so now that makes sense. It has to be a boy, and then, so then that sort of carried through why this was happening. But the whole psychological aspect, like Keith was saying, it was was it intentional then, or was it not intentional? Like, so there was that, to me, it was like ambiguous in some ways. Like, I couldn't figure out, was Warren Emily switching because they were trying to get the inheritance, or was it just Emily trying to survive and trying to snuff out Warren, or Warren trying to survive and snuff out Emily?
Well, I think she was mentally ill just because she was born a girl and they wanted her to be a male.
A boy. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I don't think she was mentally ill. I think she was driven by the money, wasn't she? So basically, she's going to get the money. Warren's going to get the money at 21. So he comes back. He's got Emily there, and I think basically, he's planning on framing Miriam for the murder of the Justice. Because he said, "My name's Marion Webster." Da 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 da. And the people that she was planning on killing were people who would be in line for the money.
Right.
So
that actually makes more sense now.
Because what would happen is that if she killed the Justice of the Peace who knew the secret, she would kill. Auntie was pretty much on her way out anyway. I don't know how many strokes that woman had, but she wasn't long for this world. If Emily didn't kill her,
basically fucked from the get-go.
And then,
but then I guess I was a little confused. And why was the sister so apt to? That's what the confusing part was. The sister, why wouldn't she just say, "Look, we're gonna be in this together, and I need your It was just weird. Why she didn't like her sister or use her sister? That was a weird thing.
I think that the odd thing is that she goes as Emily to the fake marriage, and then she pretends she's Miriam, but then Miriam has a totally different hairstyle and everything. So I'm not quite sure why she doesn't put on a brown wig.
Yeah, or just style. Yeah, exactly. Or even killing the minister. Why not do that more privately? She made a big scene out of that and ran out, and that to me just didn't make sense. If you wanted to kind of get away with it, because part of it was killing him just so that way he was one of the witnesses to knowing the true identity, and that was why she was trying to get rid of him.
Well, I think basically. They dropped the ball on that part of it, because I do think that if she dressed as Miriam and did the killing, and then then it would have made a lot more sense. It's just that, okay, I understand her using Miriam's name, then Miriam would be be suspect for the murder of the Justice of the Peace, and that would make sense. But when you got a blonde flip hairdo and Miriam's got this bouffant thing going on,
I would have killed people just because of that.
Yeah,
killed my hairdresser.
She also had that little tiny waist too.
Oh my God!
Her waist was God. It was 6 inches.
19-inch waist. Oh my God.
Well, she was quite good at taping down her boobs for Warren. She did very well with that sequence.
She had a baggy suit on.
Yeah, baggy suit. That's why.
But whether she was, I don't think she was a serial killer or a psychopathic killer. Basically, I think she was just driven by the money, basically. And I would think that if she got away with, let's say she killed Marion, Warren would get the money, because Warren would have killed Miriam in self-defense for, whatever reasons. And then she probably would have moved back to Switzerland with the millions of dollars that she would have inherited. Probably. And I think that was the main objective to the film. But I said before, because they didn't really try to match Emily up to Miriam too much. I could understand, maybe cast someone else as Miriam. It's a simple fact that she looked a little bit like Emily, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially since, you got this one actress playing both parts. So it probably would have been better to get a Miriam that looked more like Emily a little bit.
That's, to me, I think it would have been interesting if, again, the priest was killed sort of more privately, and him even saying Miriam, and then getting killed, and being it's almost like a mystery, who is doing the killing, and like you said, have that person look so much like the sister that it's one of these wait, what's going on, and why they look so much alike, and could they be twins, yeah.
Well, Matthew, what did you guys think?
Oh, holy cow!
It was a fun flick.
Yeah.
So, what did you feel about? What do you think about what we're talking about?
Just that I think that might be giving Castle a little too much credit, but I think that some of the errors are part of the point. I think that there's a dream logic at work. So check it. Like, the name Merriam-Webster, like, she gives it right away, and you think immediately, okay, that's an alibi because it's a dictionary.
That's
and
what
then,
I was thinking. I go, oh my God,
yeah,
dictionary.
it's not an accident. So then later on, you come to find out that there's a person actually named Merriam-Webster. So the whole thing sort of unravels as a dream, and you're not sure if you're supposed to follow the logic of the movie because it's a tightly wrought thriller, or if you're watching the unraveling of a crazy person whose plan was just effed from the very beginning. Does that make sense? So I think that that's part of the point. And then just at the very end with the whole taking the teeth out, it's an unmasking in a way that I think is just, it's almost proto-Cronenbergian. Like, it's the grossest, wettest way that somebody can alter their appearance by not taking a mask off, but by taking this thing out of their mouth that actually transforms their whole face, you know? So anyway, just pretty much that. Just also, I love this movie and just William Castle in general. The guy is he's just so cool, you know?
One thing I thought about the inheritance was because technically she got married to Carl, right? Or not Carl, but Jim, the bellboy. So wouldn't he technically be the one who would get the money in a way?
Well, I mean,
because like she married him and then kills the minister, and so it's like one of those things, you know.
But he didn't say by the power invested in me in the state of California. He didn't get to that. Oh yeah, he did.
Yes, he did, because he said, "Oh, can I kiss the?"
Because I want to kill the bride, and that's when she carves him up like a Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah, I want to kiss the bride, you know.
And then you see him going like this, moving his face in. I probably would have knifed him too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, the thing,
someone out there in his robe with the drink in his hand.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, she didn't. But then again, she didn't marry Carl basically under her real name. She married him under Merriam-Webster's name. So I'm not even sure that would that make it legal.
Oh, it hold up. Yeah, that's true.
But then, I mean, Merriam was just so prim and proper. Sometimes you kind of want to slap her a little bit because she's a bit too prim and proper.
Oh, yeah.
That are naive or just so stupid. You just like, come on, wake up, woman. You know?
Well, and I love how the guy, you know, she's like pining after, you know, Carl, and then Carl at the end is like, yeah, so I guess you're rich now, huh? Like, she's like, yeah, I am.
I am.
Because I'll like you even more. Now.
I can buy my own shops now.
It's fine. You got money, so you don't have to put out anymore.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, dang it, I don't have to drug her anymore.
With Afraid of Gold Digger running around in the background. But yeah, I mean William Castle, as Will is saying, I mean I do think he's a genius. I mean, I'm waiting. I mean, they're just starting to release the Blu-rays of William Castle, and they're doing like double features. At the moment, you get like 13 Ghosts and 13 Girls on one disc, and you can also, the 13 Ghosts, it has a special spookometer, so you can actually see the ghost through the screen.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can also, another one is Homicidal and Mr. Sardonicus are now out on Blu-ray as well, and they're really cheap. They're only about $7.
Oh, that's
They're not bad on Amazon at all.
What was the one in the beginning too? He mentions this is off the vein of another story. Do you remember that? He was like
the intro. It was
like
a preamble.
He's like, oh, well, you know, if you like this is our next story of how. Like, I like how he actually kind of teases his previous movies to tease in the next movie that you're going to watch.
Yeah.
If you have an interest in William Castle, they did do a film homage to him called Matinee, starring John Goodman, that came out in the 80s, which is loosely based on William Castle. And it's very, very good. It's basically about this man who comes to town and is going to be opening a horror movie. And it's got Kathy Moriarty in it and stuff like this, and how he changes his theater over with all his gimmicks to show his special film, and the relationship he builds with the children in town while he's doing that.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm sure the town is probably losing their minds because it's like scary, whatever. It's like breaking the norm, right? Like that's what he's pushing against.
Well, the thing is that at the time that William Castle was making these films, it's quite interesting to know that on a Saturday, parents used to drop their kids off for double features, and to these William Castle films. And, so this would have been like a double feature with something else, like another film. You would see like Creature of the Black Lagoon mixed with,
Right.
I don't
That's
know,
cool.
The House of Haunted Hill or something. But they would always be like these double features, and with cartoons playing at the same time in between features and stuff like this. So it was like an all-day event that you go. And I know that Tale tells that if you listen to a lot of filmmakers like Robert Zemeckis or Leonard Maltin and people like that, their earliest childhood memories of going to the movies is seeing William Castle films and like sitting at the Tingler when the seats are vibrating and watching the skeletons fly across and people throwing their popcorn boxes at the skeletons and but you listen to their like childhood memories. And there's a really good documentary, and I'll see if I can find links to it and I'll put it up on the website. But there's a William Castle documentary that's really good. It has all these filmmakers talking about that they were very, very much impressed and influenced by William Castle. And their love of movies comes from seeing William Castle films. That's cool. And the Universal Monsters. It was those two things that keep them going. Joe Dante was a huge fan, who went on to do The Howling, films like that. He was a huge fan of the William Castle films. So, and I know that in season 3 we'll be covering some more William Castle films because I've got a lot of tricks up my sleeve. Because the more William Castle we can cover, the happier I'll be.
So, flying skeletons.
Well, I mean, anyone that uses Vincent Price in a film has got my kudos because he's a god.
Right.
Yeah.
I even have a Vincent Price bobblehead, so that's cool. So Matthew, what are your thoughts about
everything you said was very good. I really enjoyed it. Fun, I was into William Castle when I was like really young. I remember I was always like bummed out that I wasn't able to go to one of the theaters and like feel the Tingler or see the skeletons come down and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good time. It's funny that like you said, the critics liked it better than Psycho. That really stands out to me.
Yeah, that did to me too, because I was reading, when I was reading about the movie, I was kind of feel like, oh wow, they liked it better than Psycho.
But I thought Jean Arliss did a better job of being a woman than Michael Caine, or being a man than Michael Caine did of being a woman, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the interesting thing about Homicidal was released on June 28, 1961. It was the #1 film to July 26, 1962. So actually for a whole month, it was the #1 film.
Wow.
That's because everybody was afraid to leave the theater and watch.
Exactly.
But I mean, I said before, I mean, Homicidal, I mean, there's some critics who are dismissive of it, but now it's garnered such a cult following and is now considered one of Castle's best films.
Yeah.
So,
that really is the way of things, though. As time goes on, it's sort of like wine, it just gets better and people appreciate it more.
Well, I think about William Castle films also is that you kind of go in seeing a William Castle film, and whether it's Straight Jacket with Joan Crawford, which John Waters is a huge fan of William Castle, and he got to play William Castle in the Feud miniseries about Bet and Joan, the Feud. Yeah. But it's quite interesting that he's still influencing a lot of people, but when you do see a William Castle film, you think it doesn't always say what it is on the box. It always throws you for a loop. I mean, like when you watch the Tingler and then it goes to the color sequence, and you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Or even 13 Ghosts, when it's like, you got Margaret Hamilton running around in the Ghost, and they keep making these nods as, oh, she looks like a witch. She looks like the witch, she was the Wicked Witch of the West End.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Sardonicus, it's like, it's all done quite Englishy and stuff like this, but there's always these weird twists and turns in the story that, even though they're black and white films, there's always these gray storylines going out through all his films, and they work on a much deeper level. I think that you look at them like B movies and they're quite dismissive, but then when you start watching them, you realize that, there is a different twist to these movies that you don't normally experience in a lot of Hollywood films. I mean, Homicidal, you get Psycho, okay, maybe Psycho pushed the envelope a little bit as far as, mention the word transvestite and showing a toilet and then, the Anthony Perkins character and the performances were excellent in Psycho. But with Homicidal, it kind of turned it on its head. I remember the first time I saw Homicidal and I was like, what? And it kind of like what I got to see this again. What did I just watch?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, with Homicidal, I think if it's a film you have never seen before, I think it will catch you by surprise because it is not what you expect it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially for that time. Again, the first sequence when you see, Emily's stab you just okay, now this is something different.
I wasn't expecting her to do that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I literally, when she opened her purse and pulled the knife out, I was like, "And what's going on? What just happened? What?" Literally, I'm like, "Okay,
I just like the close-ups of the faces as it got more dramatic. He was moving in, trying to kiss the bride, and her eyes kept going down, boom, boom,
And then when she thinks the police are following her, and she then, they go around her, then she like switches cars, and she takes the glove off and stuff. Like is really interesting, and I think it did a better job in the sense that Psycho did, that it pulls you in very quickly, whereas Psycho is a very slow build. Mm-hmm. And I can see where critics would maybe get mad in some ways because it's like there's a slow build, and then once you get to the point to where Maureen gets killed, you go, oh well, what the hell is the point of this movie? And then it kind of like, if I was a critic, I'd be like, I just thought I was watching this woman, now you killed her off, now what am I doing? Now what am I doing? So I could see a critic maybe being a little frustrated, whereas this throws you very quickly into this very interesting character, and you then want to follow that character and see what happens now, what next,
Exactly.
Well, I think, with Psycho, Psycho's a film in two halves, basically. And this one is basically one film, basically, where I think it's got more of a follow through, because you do get the second part of Psycho, and then you get, the Vera Miles character coming in, which is like, it turns into like a different kind of movie than what it started out to be. And I think another thing with critics, you got to remember the reason why they were pissed off at Psycho, because normally critics would get a special screening, and they didn't get a special screening with Psycho, so they might have been taking it out on Alfred Hitchcock. Like, how dare you not give us our own private screening because we're special? You're making us sit with the rest of society. How dare you? And I think that's probably where a lot of the bad criticism came first from Psycho. It's probably from ill feelings of not being special enough.
Yeah, that's very true.
Where I think, and I think the reason why Homicidal probably did quite well is because, by this point, Homicidal is, not his first film, William Castle's first film, and he's done quite a few films before this, and I think it probably caught critics by surprise because they're thinking, oh, here we go again, it's a William Castle film. What kind of, it's just going to be another gimmick film? And then when they do watch it, and they realize it's like, actually, there's a bit of, it's a bit darker than what we anticipated. This is a bit different than what we're normally seeing. Yes, it has the fright break, but if you take the fright break out, the themes in the film are a lot darker than what you normally would get in a B-rated film, really.
That, and just having an unstable character is just always fun to watch, and you're like, oh, there's something really wrong with, like, especially when she's like feeding Helga, here, eat this. Oh, you think I poisoned it? Oh no, it's really good. You're like, I wouldn't eat your food either, lady.
Well, when she's got the knife, though, she's getting it sharpened.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
It's like, what the fuck was that? She's getting her knife sharpened. It's a surgical knife. Doctors use it. Oh, I use it for many things.
Helga?
God. Well, I can tell you that as far as surgical knives are, technology has moved on. We no longer use those kind of knives anymore.
I know, poor guy got put out of service. It's like, oh, there goes my job.
But I did find, I would say the only thing really clunky in this film is the doctor coming in. I thought his role was kind of clunky, but I think he was just there so he can give his like psychological analysis on why Warren was the way Warren was, sort of thing. But as I said before, Psycho did it clumsily. This film does it clumsily, and when we get to Dress to Kill after the commercial break, you'll realize that the psychiatrist in that does it clumsily again. So, but it's quite interesting. So before we move on to Dress to Kill, does anyone have anything extra they want to add in about Homicidal?
Okay. Just that we saw more Joan Marshall flicks in the 60s and 70s. She just knocked it out of the park with this. I don't know if she's done any other movies besides this one. I know she was in a lot of TV shows. but man, she just really crushed it in that role.
They actually cut her hair and dyed it brown too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she's Joan Marshall. I believe that or Jean Arliss. I mean, I don't know why they. I think they changed their character name so that way it would.
Jean is very ambiguous, right? So if you think Jean, you can think boy Jean too. So
yeah. And I mean, I know she did like episodes of like Bonanza and episodes of Bewitched and things like that.
She did Twilight Zone as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. Anyone who does Twilight Zone has kudos, don't they? So.
Exactly.
So with much ado, what we're going to do is we're going to put the lid on Homicidal for now. And what we're going to go into is the film Dressed to Kill. Now, the interesting thing is Dressed to Kill is a love letter by Brian De Palma for Psycho. Brian De Palma, as you know, if you're a big Brian De Palma fan like I am, he was very much influenced by Alfred Hitchcock, but he was able to put his own twist on things. At the time of it, it was considered an X rating, Dressed to Kill, and there was problems. So he had to unfortunately cut it slightly to make sure that the critics were happy and to make sure the MPAA was happy to get it down to an R rating. And most of these cuttings had to do with a little bit of violence and a lot to do with the shower sequence. And it was actually the first Hollywood film to show bush, which is quite interesting. Now, another good thing about Dressed to Kill.
Not match the Drake.
Well, she didn't have a 70s bush either. She had it nicely trimmed, which is quite interesting for the time period.
Ginger bush.
Yes. And, but it's Alan did earn a Golden Globe nomination for a new movie, Best New Star, which is quite weird because Nancy Allen, who was married to Brian De Palma at this time, actually was in a film before this called Carrie, directed by Brian De Palma, and to do Blowout later on.
Right.
But
Carrie was so much like this movie. They both opened up with the shower sequence. They both ended with the weird dream where the girl's leaping up, freaking out, unconsolable.
Oh, yeah.
That was like
sort of dream-esque, yeah.
Basically, it only won one award, and that has to be for Best Actress, Angie Dickinson. That was a Saturn Award. But it was up for Bad Movie Awards, it was up for Golden Raspberry Awards when it came out. And now it's now considered one of the best films of the 1980s genre. So it looks like how something came out was like poo-pooed and everyone, slagging it off. And then, 10 years later, now it's considered a classic. It's one of the best films ever made for the 1980s period. Yeah. And it really pushed a lot of envelopes and stuff like this that, films really didn't do at that time. I mean, we're just coming out of the 70s, and here we got Brian De Palma making this film in 79, and he did push the envelope a lot. That he did. I know that, later films that you would see as far as Hollywood, we're talking about major Hollywood films here. We're not talking, if you're looking at Halloween and Friday the 13th, films like that, they were independent films that were bought by big production companies, by big movie studios. But this was actually a movie studio film. So what we're going to do but I also like that, and then Brian De Palma also brought in Pino Donaggio, who also did the score for Blowout. He also did the score for Carrie. And he's very much in the Bernard Herrmann vein as a film composer.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break and have the trailer for the film trailer, Dressed to Kill, and then we'll be right back.
Amazon is here to make your life easier. By just the tap of a button, you can turn the camera on your phone to your own personal shopping list. Introducing Flow. Just tap the camera icon onto the search bar, and you can find whatever it is you're looking for, right on Amazon. Faster than scanning a barcode and typing the name of your item into the search engine. Besides, searching with words is so 2012. Save time and money. Amazon, where shopping meets effortless.
Do you find me attractive?
Of course.
Would you want to sleep with me?
Yes.
Then why don't you?
Because I love my wife, and it isn't worth jeopardizing my marriage.
sorry. I shouldn't have been so rude. Thank you for picking up.
Tell them about Bobby. I wanted to talk to her first.
Brian De Palma, the master of the macabre, who shocked audiences everywhere with Sisters, Carrie, Obsession, and The Fury, now invites you to a showing of the latest fashion in murder. Dressed to Kill. Michael Caine, Angie Dickinson, Nancy Allen, Dressed to Kill. Murder, made to order.
Welcome back. Before we get into the synopsis of the film Dressed to Kill, does anyone want to add anything about the making of Dressed to Kill? Starting with you, Matthew.
Well, I think it's really interesting, all this transvestite and transgender serial killing stuff. I guess that all comes from Ed Gein. Because Ed Gein, of course, liked to wear the skins of old women that he had dug up from the graveyard
Silence of the
and
Lambs
dance around. Yeah. But there are several serial killers that fall into this a little bit. You got the BTK killer. He liked to dress up like a woman and take pictures of himself. He would wear the clear mask it was a woman's mask with the red lipstick and the blonde hair.
Oh.
And
wow.
Oh, it's so creepy. Oh. And of course he would take his victims' panties and masturbate in them. And then he would wear those panties around all the time and stuff. He really got off on that.
What is that
about? And there was also another really.
What did you say?
The BTK killer, Dennis Rader. He had transvestite leanings. He liked to dress like a woman, and he liked to wear the panties of his victims. And then there's this guy Douglas Perry. You know about him?
No.
He killed a bunch of prostitutes in the 90s, and then just like in this, he claims it was his alter ego that was a woman that did. Well, what happened was he said when he killed the prostitutes, he was a man, but then later he actually went and got a sex change in Thailand, and he says that he can't remember killing him because now he's a woman, and that was the man side of him that did that. So he doesn't know if that man Douglas did that because now he's Donna.
Wow.
Interesting character, yeah. That was in Spokane, Washington in the 90s. But he didn't get popped until 2012 when DNA evidence linked him to the crimes.
Gone. Poor Donna.
Damn it, Doug.
Like in the movie, it's like every serial killer is a transgender or transvestite, but it's actually fairly rare.
What about you, Mill? Do you got anything to add about the making of Dressed to Kill?
Oh, yeah. You guys want to hear my crazy theory about Dressed to Kill and erotic thrillers in general?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, so check it. This one it sets off a whole bunch of other ones like Basic Instinct and The Color of Night and a lot of really good ones. But like you said, Keith, this really pushed some boundaries, and I think that why is something that people don't really talk about a whole lot, and the why is super interesting, and it lends itself to a lot of the details. So what I mean by that is I don't think anything about the shower scene is accidental. I think that we can talk about the bush or the lack of apparent bush for 1980. We can talk about the crazy jump cut from Angie Dickinson's face to her body double, which is obvious to the point where it was probably purposefully obvious, because what this all goes to is cognitive dissonance. You're watching something and you're supposed to feel something, but you're feeling something different from what you expect everybody else to be feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what I mean by that is, so imagine Betamax was sort of a thing and cable was sort of a thing back then, but in 1980, most people were going to the movies. Okay. So imagine Friday night, date night, you go out to the movies, like 2 minutes into the opening credits, you see a vagina the size of a Toyota 4Runner, and it is leaning over you. Okay, I don't care what you say, but on some level, this is not a good time for anyone. It's sort of a good time, yes, but not really. And he hammers this home by threatening you with vaginas later on in the museum. Around every time she stops and looks back, over her left shoulder, there's a painting with the vagina right next to her head.
That's
you can't
true.
miss it. So he's threatening you with more shots of the vagina because it gets super intense when the guy goes down on her in the taxi. Again, you're watching it, and there's like, we all kid around, and it's like, haha, this is really hot. But if you're watching it, it's sort of squirm-inducing, and he keeps doing that over and over again through the movie. He keeps ratcheting up the cognitive dissonance, and every time he does like a split screen, and then a split screen doubling over that split screen, and pretty soon you're watching people watching TV while somebody else is watching them through the window. What he's doing is he's fragmenting your ability to pay attention to something and just stressing you out, you know? So anyway, I think that erotic thrillers are basically horror movies where sex is the monster.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Now
I agree. I mean, and then you're followed also with the first scene that, you know, her kind of getting raped, you know, by her husband. I mean, it doesn't look like she's having a great time. She just looks like she's laying there waiting for it to end and be over with, you know? So it's just, like you said, like a violation, like, you know, right? You're censoring.
Right. And then he flips it, actually. This is where it gets even crazier. He flips it because once Angie Dickinson gets killed, there's a ratcheting down in the tension as far as sex goes while the violence goes up. So as you're watching her get killed, I don't know about this the first time. I've watched this a couple of times now, and I've watched it with people. I've watched it by myself. I watched it last night with Cassie, and I've never seen it with her, and that's what made me think about the whole tension thing. So that by the time you're watching Angie Dickinson get killed, there's almost a weird release that happens because you know that it's not going to be this crazy later on. And one other thing is that I think for the people who saw this movie the first time, there was a sense you didn't know exactly how far this movie was going to go. And I think everybody was just really stressed out while watching it and not really understanding why. And he's a genius, but he's kind of a wicked genius for putting all that together.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my whole thing on the making.
And what about yourself, Vicky? Anything you want to add about the making of Dressed to Kill?
I thought it was interesting that they had to make an R-rated version and an X-rated version, because I didn't know that when I first watched it. I think it was on HBO back in the 80s. And it's only like 30 seconds longer, and it was because of the pubic hair in the shower scene. They had to cut that out. And I mean, full frontal, I guess you still can't, I guess you can do full frontal still now in an R rating. I'm not sure, but sort of like, what was the series I was watching? Black Sails. And all it was mature rating on Hulu, but it was also a Starz original, but they had full frontal bush and stuff like that in there. And they were shown dick too. So, I mean, it wasn't an X rating. So I was just really surprised that it was only that 30 seconds that would give it an X rating. And like you said, the shower scene, I think that it wasn't just that, it was the blood in the elevator scene, because they had that shot of the killer slitting her throat. And, it was just those few things that gave it an X rating. And back, I guess, I don't know. I guess I have to put my mindset back in the 80s, which isn't hard for me to do. But I mean, I guess we're desensitized now. We're full frontal anything. It's like, who gives a shit? It's like, oh yeah, tits and ass, you know.
Well, I'm sure Game of Thrones probably did a lot for that as far as television series showing full frontal now.
Yeah.
Every episode's got it. I mean, look at that dragon lady. I mean,
Daenerys.
Yeah, I mean, her clothes will burn off, but she's skin's fine and she's walking naked.
But it was
The Hitcher?
intense, though. It was like what Will was saying was a good.
Is that TV series on HBO?
Give that much thought.
Mm-hmm. I remember The Hitcher. And what about yourself, John?
Yeah, there was full frontal nudity all the time in that. Like they were going at it. That's all it was.
Yeah, it was
hard.
With HBO showing off the simple fact that it's like, oh, look, we're subscription, we can get away with a lot more than network TV. And I think...
Yeah, exactly.
And though I have to say that Hitcher didn't do it in a gratuitous way. It always was part of their story, but it's quite interesting to show, like, oh, get HBO because we have these independent series that can push the boundaries where Hollywood can't, which was great.
Yeah. For me, I mean, Brian De Palma, like, who, did Scarface and Raising Cain and Untouchable, for me, this is like what I would call like a modern noir style of film. I mean, that now, having seen this, I can say where, I've seen Basic Instinct, I can see American Psycho, some of these movies that really give you different juxtaposition and anglings to the characters, and really just, like as Will was saying, meant to throw you off, like your equilibrium off in the movie, to kind of put you in an uneasy state. I actually now see sort of how those movies got sort of their notoriety in some ways through this film. And it was produced for like $6.5 million, and it made $31.9 million. And so, that in itself shows like it was a success, and people ran out to kind of see this movie, because I'm sure if you're a guy and you're a girl and you like girls naked, I mean, the first scene you're seeing is a bare naked woman, but there is obviously, like Will had said too, a level of uncomfortable, almost like you're being violated by these really striking raw images. The knife cutting in, when it cuts, it's not a slight slash, it's like a deep,
right,
really deep recessive cut that it's like cutting into like meat, and like it just makes you kind of gag a little bit. So that's something that, to the combination of the sexual overtone and then the violence combined, pushes you kind of over the edge. So yeah, but I definitely appreciated now kind of understanding sort of there are movies like this that kind of pushed the envelope for other films that I had seen, later in life.
And so, Vicky, do you want to start off and give us a synopsis of the film Dressed to Kill?
Yeah, Dressed to Kill is a 1980 American erotic thriller film written and directed by Brian De Palma, starring Michael Caine, Angie Dickinson, Nancy Allen, and Keith Gordon. It centers on the murder of a housewife and an investigation involving a young prostitute who witnessed the murder. The victim's teenage son and her psychiatrist. And they all intertwine in one way or another.
And before we get into lights, camera, action, I will let our listeners know that there are going to be spoilers about Dressed to Kill. So if you haven't seen the film, I suggest you watch the film before you listen to our podcast. Or if you like spoilers, keep listening. So, Matthew, what are your thoughts about the film Dressed to Kill?
Oh, I was like a little bit obsessed with this film in the 80s. Of course, all the sex is great. I don't know. Brian De Palma's pacing, though, can be a little slow, because I've seen this movie probably 6-7 times. So when I watched it again, I was just like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, but that's just Brian De Palma. He's imitating Hitchcock and all those other filmmakers. He does like some of the same shots all the time, like with the going down the steps of the museum. It's like in The Untouchables with the baby carriage, which is of course from a famous Russian silent film. But it's a fun one. It's a great flick. I really love it.
What I like about Dressed to Kill, I like how I love the way that it's filmed like as a dream. Everything's very dreamy looking. Everything's very soft focused, and it's almost like you're not dealing with reality. You're just dealing in this artificial sense of a reality. And I also I think the reason why I'm a Brian De Palma fan, actually, I'm not too fond of his later works, because I think that unfortunately, he's a product of his time. And in order to be able to do a film the way a Brian De Palma film goes, I think sometimes he's not able to add that now, because we are now dealing with audiences with not a very good attention span. So they don't want to watch a film breathe. But I love how a lot of it's done like a silent film. The whole sequences in the museum, there's no dialogue. Basically, you're just getting music. It's played by the music, the camera angles, the way the camera follows her around from room to room. And there is dialogue, of course, in this film, but a lot of it's done with like a silent film perspective, which which I quite like about Dressed to Kill.
He's a very visual director, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things he does really interesting with that scene, Keith, you brought up Deep Red earlier, and that whole museum sequence to me is super Argento-esque. But also there's just a very strange continuity to all of that. You said that they're quiet all the way through. Then there's the taxi cab scene, which is completely insane. And then she ends up in a strange person's apartment, makes a phone call, and to a person that we don't recognize, who says, "Who is this?" So again, there's this constant like jarring. It makes you wonder. It's almost nonsensical as you're watching. You're just trying to follow the thread, and like I said, you know that she's going to get killed, and there's a release sort of to it. It's got a very sort of almost a ritualistic feel as she's walking down the hallway dressed in all white, just waiting to be sacrificed. It's anyway.
I mean, it's also like, you go into the pander of sort of what happens with Psycho and the morality of this woman, because, she's married. There's this thing of like, her going against her better judgment, if you will, like when she goes and meets with the psychologist to kind of say, I'm not, this is, I don't feel like I'm getting what I want. And then she kind of flirts with the psychologist. And then, then this event happens where she meets this man in a museum who is a complete stranger, and he flirts with her. And then when the weird sort of thing, when she takes the glove off and there's a ring, and he walks away and he runs away. And so it's almost like this, teasing of infidelity. And then, the taxi ride, which in itself is a whole scene, because like, I love the taxi driver who's just like watching all this happen. And he's like, I gotta adjust the mirror here. What's going on back there? It's all teasing or laying into sort of morality and her morality, what she stands for. And sort of like within Psycho, she kind of realizes what she's done, because when she opens a drawer and she sees that this person has had tests done, and there's a possibility that she could have contracted something. It's like a very quick test of her, like, what did I just do? And I was being stupid. And so she kind of is walking away thinking maybe, oh, okay, you know what? This is what I needed to say, stop it, enough's enough. And then it's like the crime and punishment, right? Now she gets punished for this act, and it's sort of a symbol to me. It's like symbolic of sort of what happens with Psycho, of you doing something against your morality and then you wanting to very quickly make amends with that. And then it's too late, like very quickly, it's like too late. And it, you can't,
I also like, that part where before her character does die, you can also see, I like the way that he has the child looking at her and like looking at her guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you did. She's like, and the mom's like, turn around.
But I mean, kids are pretty perspective. They have this perspective where, apparently they can see your guilt or feel your guilt, and which I thought was quite an interesting part of it. Now I know, like when the film came out, it was considered very misogynistic, but to be honest, watching it last night, I think it's more of a feminist movie, because all the women in the film own their sexuality. They own it. They're not products of their sexuality. They own their sexuality. They're very comfortable in their own skins. You got a housewife who's, her relationship is, sexually boring. Now we know that, this is her second husband. Her first husband got killed in Vietnam, which gave the kid. Which is Keith Gordon in this instance. And, it's almost like, I'm not sure if she settled or was she just been married long, where sex has normally just become, mechanical, just to an extent. And, which happens in a lot of marriages or long-term relationships. Sex can become very mechanical if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But I like the way that, there's, and then you got Nancy Allen's character, who basically, she's a prostitute, but she owns it. She's not trapped in her surroundings. She lives well on it. And, she's quite happy. She's proud of her profession that she chose. It wasn't a profession that was chosen for her. She chose it herself, and she owns it.
Yeah.
So, I think at the time I could see why it could be considered misogynistic, but looking at it, it's quite a feministic movie, really.
Yeah. Especially that scene when Nancy Allen, Liz Blake, is on the phone, and she's like setting up her next trick, and she's like, I'm talking to mom, hold on. And oh yeah, so can he? And then I'll get you the money. Okay, yeah. So how much money can I? Like, she literally is like owning that scene. I was like, good for her. She didn't need no pimp. She got her own. She got herself going.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing about this is Keith Gordon's character was actually supposed to be a 10-year-old boy, and they only believe that they only tinkered around with some of his dialogue, but pretty much kept the 10-year-old boy dialogue going, which when you get to the end of the film and you get that sequence. Now, if you picture what was said during that, heard by a 10-year-old boy, it all comes quite innocent. But because he's 18 at this time, and he's an 18-year-old boy in this instance, and now it just has like some kind of weird sexual incantation to it, which is quite bizarre.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, his character, too, I wonder if they deliberately, now knowing that, made him older because they wanted to make him a contender for the killer, because there was some awkwardness about him, too. That, like, you didn't really know quite who he was until when you then realize, like, he's actually trying to find out what happened to his mom, basically.
Well, the reason why Keith Gordon was casted, watching an interview with him, is the reason why he was cast is he was going to film school to become a film director, which Keith Gordon now is a film director. Yeah. He did make a couple movies as far as being an actor goes, but he's now doing more directing. And basically, he was in this course that Brian De Palma was teaching, and Brian De Palma decided, well, instead of teaching you a course, let's make a movie, which he made a movie called Home Movies, which was kind of like based on Brian De Palma's family. And it's a very independent kind of film. If it's for hardcore Brian De Palma fans only. It's not a film that's going to set you on fire, but it's quite interesting in the stake about how to make a movie, and and how he did it. And Keith Gordon came from that, and then he was doing this stuff for Dressed to Kill, and basically he was so impressed with working with Keith Gordon because Keith Gordon kept asking questions about directing and camera angles and everything went there. So he asked Keith Gordon to do the part, and he goes, it's for a 10-year-old boy, but I really want you to be in it. So it's kind of like, because he was impressed with Keith Gordon in Home Movies and him as a friend and a confidant, that's why he got cast. So it wasn't even like, oh, let's rewrite this because it's not right for a 10-year-old boy. It was just like, oh, I really like this guy, I want to put him in the movie. So, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
which I think it probably does work, because I think if you had a 10-year-old boy in it, I don't, let's say, with all the scenes in there with him doing, it might have been a bit too much. It might have pushed an envelope a bit too far, maybe. Yeah.
Well, especially the detective scene when the detective's talking. I forget who he's talking to, but he's sitting right outside, and he's basically like, talking about. He's basically like saying his mom was like
bad. Yeah.
Like he was like totally like bashing his mom, and then he's sitting there going like, okay, like. So imagine a 10-year-old sitting there listening to this guy like slut shame his mom, like what the hell? Which he, by the way, he always like Michael. Who is it? Dennis Franz always plays a detective. Like it's like that's the state.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think Dennis Franz is a good friend of Brian De Palma because he has done quite a few Brian De Palma films. He did, I think he's in Body Double. He's also that film where with Amy Irving, where she's the psychic with Andrew Stevens. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it now. It totally escapes me. It'll come back to me when we're finished here, like it always does. Right. But also, like the voice of Bobby is done by William Finley, who was, Phantom of the Paradise guy. So it's just quite interesting. I do like Dressed to Kill. I mean, I do drag it out on occasion and watch it, and I quite like the feel of it and the way it goes. And I mean, I can imagine why. I mean, whether it's quite interesting, Michael Caine in an evil role like that, which at this point, he was pretty much just, an East End actor sort of thing. I mean, to throw controversy to the wind, I'm not quite sure if Michael Caine will be considered the best actor because he always plays an English person no matter what he does.
Yeah.
Even when he won his Oscar for Cider House Rules, he was an English guy, even though he's supposed to be born and bred in Maine. So he's a bit like Sean Connery in that fact. no matter what Sean Connery does, he's always gonna be Scottish.
Yeah.
I'm Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. I'm playing an Irish person in Untouchables. I'm still Scottish.
I can't help it, but now, side note, I can't help it now. Every time I hear Sean Connery, I think of the SNL skit with him and Alec Trebek.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got balls. I mean, let's face it. He plays an Egyptian in Highlander, and he's still Scottish. So,
Oh, he said he was a Spaniard, but okay, it's right. He was an Egyptian, but then he was a Spaniard, and he's still got a Scottish brogue.
Yeah. Well, even in James Bond, I mean, even though he's a great James Bond, he's still Scottish. So.
Yeah.
But no, he has depth. Yes.
That's right. And he's still sexy for an old man.
What did you think of the relationship between Keith Gordon's character of Peter and Nancy Allen's character of Liz?
I think
you could
really
harness that sexual energy. You could run a power plant.
I mean, I think one of the problems of the film is that you're not, as far as Andy Dickinson or Kate Miller's husband is concerned, you don't really know much about him. I mean, you got the husband there, and there's he's just like a non-entity outside of him watching a football game and can't recognize his wife's voice on the phone, and shaving with a towel around, and basically giving a wham bam thank you ma'am kind of presence. I mean, that's it. Yeah.
Do you think that he was? Do you think that he served as kind of the counterpoint to Michael Caine's character? Because you're watching it, and it's pretty laid out, who Michael Caine is and who the killer is, and then you've got this husband that's sort of kind of in the background. And watching this, it never occurred to me that the husband might be the killer. But I wonder if he was set up as sort of a thing to keep in the back of your mind that he might be the killer when all signs were pointing to, Michael Caine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought more of the son, or even, for a minute, I thought it was the guy that she hooked up with, but then it was very quickly that moved away from that. But for some reason, I kept thinking the son. I thought the son was emotionally damaged, and there was something about him that made me not so much the husband. I think the husband was just exposition, tell us about your wife, and and he talked about the wife, and that was after that you never saw him, right? Then he was gone. He was completely gone from the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's because you're nerd shaming Keith Gordon, John, but
I could be.
I mean, the funny thing about it, when you watch this film on repeat viewing, which I've done, the killer, or Bobby, or Michael Caine in drag, he's in all the scenes. Like in the museum, you see a quick flash of him passing by, and he's everywhere, which I thought was quite ingenious to actually put that person in. He's almost like not in every frame, but he's in every scene that he transpires. So Michael Caine's character, either in drag or out of drag, he's in every scene almost, except for, of course, the shower sequence, of course, in the beginning. But, he's there. You see, Bobby staring at thing. And I think that they do try to throw it off the course that, I mean, this is where one of the scenes is kind of strange for me, is that when Michael Caine or Dr. Robert Elliott goes and talks to a fellow shrink about Bobby, and this other fellow shrink is apparently seeing Bobby, but he kind of, Michael Caine's going, Bobby's going off the rails. She stole my razor, da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And the psychiatrist goes, okay, sort of thing. I mean, I know that he comes in later to give his exposition of why everything happened the way it did. Went very, bumbly as well as, the previous films we covered this month. But it was just kind of an odd scene, really, I thought. Because you're kind of like, obviously you must know that your fellow psychiatrist is Bobby. And he's talking to you like Bobby in the third person, which I don't know much about transsexualism. I don't have a problem with it. But I don't understand it per se. So I don't know if they really think of themselves in the third person.
I think it's like this. So it would be more of an identity disorder, right? Because I think part of the fragility to what that doctor's trying to do is not break him even more by saying, like, Bobby, like, yo, like, hey, we're talking about, so he has to kind of play along, I guess. I mean, you tell me from a psychological standpoint, like a psychologist is better to keep the personalities separate so that way they can determine how to treat each one versus like making one confront the other. So maybe that's where it's coming from.
Well, nowadays, transsexualism is a different thing than maybe it was in the 80s. I'm not quite sure how it was looked at in the 80s. But I know nowadays it's like, when you become a transsexual and whether you're going to have the full change or you get a partial change or whatever way that you want to express your transsexualism, you don't consider yourself in the third person, and you don't really have, I don't think you don't really have like a third personality or a second personality. You are the same personality, just that you're trapped in the wrong body.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's different. I think in this, it's an actual identity disorder that splits, and one is a woman and one is a man. And so it's not like transsexualism. Like, yeah, so you would say like, I'm going to now become Jane. At one point, I'm going to stop referring to myself as John, and now I'm Jane. But it's a rarity that people would then say, well, I mean, you would say when I was John, so you would refer to, but I would never use the third person that way.
Yeah.
I hate to be politically correct, but I think it's transgender, they call it now. They don't really say
transgender. Yeah. Why do I say transsexual?
But,
transgender.
The serial killer I was talking about was like that. But I think that's an excuse. He's saying, well, I don't know because that was the man part of me, and I have no idea what he did but now that I'm a woman, I don't know. But that seems like a lame excuse of killing a bunch of prostitutes.
No, I don't. But I think it's an identity thing. I think quite literally he thinks of himself as like another. It's another person. So to me, that's what I got from this. Liz was like literally, oh, look what she's up to again, and the doctor's going, uh-oh, what's going on now? What's happening with this other personality? What are they doing?
Well, I mean, maybe it's like a bit like Norman being his mother. I mean, he blacked out when he became his mother as, like a split personality sort of thing that, we'll actually go into more discussion when we do Split and Sybil later on in the year. But, I mean, I guess it's more like that. But I think that the reason why the message gets a bit messed up a little bit because you do have a showing of Phil Donahue with his classic show from, the 80s. And he is talking to I forgot about that. Yeah. A transgender person, and the transgender person is not considering himself in the third person. You go, like, this is what I was, and now this is what I was. I was in the army. A lot of straight or normal, and in quotation marks, guys who are really masculine are transgender, but they were in the wrong bodies. And so you have this whole saying going on in this television set, and Nancy Allen's watching it and Michael Caine's watching it as all the split screens going. And then, so you get this message of, okay, this is what it is. And then you get the psychiatrist coming in at the end, giving his diagnosis, which is kind of messes up everything. The message is kind of wrong. And I can imagine that nowadays, if this film came out today, there'd probably be a lot of protests because I don't think the LGBTQIA, what they're called now. I don't know. There's a couple more letters in there now that were in there from 2 months ago. But I think I think that there probably would have been huge protests at that time for a film like this. A bit like Al Pacino's Cruising, how that like shattered the whole gay world when that came out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because it's also insinuating that there's an instability when you transition. And I think that's sort of like, yeah, you couldn't do this type of film now because it's almost like saying when a person is trying to make that change for themselves, that it literally splits their personality and they almost lose control of who they are. And it's always about control and trying to control what your body is and what it should be, and I think, especially like what I do say this movie is very forward thinking for people who don't maybe understand, trans, and like having the scene where Nancy's, Liz is telling Peter like how it all happens and what happens, and the old ladies are like clutching their pearls behind them. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
It keeps panning back, and you see the woman who literally looks like she's about to have a heart attack. But for anyone who's going through a transition, like that scene for them is like, wow, like they're actually explaining what this is, and she's doing it so eloquently versus the doctor just does it so bumbly and is sort of like haphazard, like, yeah, I think this is what happens, and then this is I think what happened to him, and it's it's not clear versus Liz does a great job explaining sort of a transition from a man to a woman.
I mean, because apparently
it's funny that all this came from Ed, because he wasn't transgender. He just liked Ed Gein.
Yeah,
I mean that's what Psycho is based on, and that's where everything's going back to Psycho here. And he just liked to dissect vaginas and wrap them around his penis. He wasn't really transgender.
No, he had well, I mean, wasn't Ed Gein basically his had to do with like having a really religious mother and having difficulties with his
all about his mother.
Yeah, it always comes down to the mother. I mean, look at Vicky's kids.
My kids are fine.
Mother, and you just hear her go, boy.
I don't call my kids boy. I don't do that. I'm a bad mother, but I'm really good at it. Most of the time, I'm a really good. My kids are fabulous.
Just checking that you're alive. That's all.
I'm alive.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it just seems like, I mean, with Ed Gein, I mean, I think we said in Psycho, I mean, he did
just listening.
He did move interior design in a new direction, which I think
he got away from the animal prints to human print.
Well, he's a god for honest farmer. I mean, let's face it. No, no body part went wasted. So
there you go.
I kind of
like I need a night table. I can use that limb for
the Ed Gein stories and stuff. It's kind of conflicting because and because a lot of the recounts that I've heard of him or Gein, whatever, you didn't really hear about so much about him using the skin so much.
Well, he dressed
in it. I know it was like Silence of the Lambs kind of thing.
But I think he decorated his house too, as well, with it. Like he literally was like
shades and shit. He sounds like Ike.
His bed had skulls on the posts.
That's where
he would go out
the whole Texas Chainsaw sort of image of that reality.
I think of it as a different serial killer.
Yeah, and Leatherface was a transsexual too, because you think about the dinner scene. He's wearing the mask with the woman's face, and he's always the one cooking, and he plays the matriarch in the family there. For sure.
That's true. I mean, Ed Gein, he must have been interested on a Saturday morning watching his cartoons eating out of his skull bowl. So
yeah. He said that the skull bowl never worked till he couldn't get it to sit right, and it would always spill milk everywhere.
I know. And what a waste of Fruit Loops.
He's cuckoo for Cocoa Pops.
But I mean, it's I mean, I do think that again, we do have a clunky exposition or explanation of why the killer is doing what he's doing, which is kind of odd in its own way. I mean, I'd be quite interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if this was like through a screenwriter, which is Brian De Palma in this instance, because he wrote the screenplay for this, is his own misunderstanding of the situation, or was it the way it was really thought of in those times?
I think that it probably was. I would say that it's probably a product of the times, and I'm not excusing, a pretty terrible view of the trans phenomenon, but also if you think about when this movie was made, it came out in 1980. AIDS was a thing that existed but hadn't really been named yet, and so a lot of people were dying, and it was really scary, and it was all tied into alternative sexuality at the time. And so there was this current that, you couldn't really talk about in polite society, but it was really happening all around you. And I think that a lot of the fear against trans people was just something that it's kind of like for the same reason that we rounded up Japanese people during World War II. They're easy to spot. So when you have something that you're afraid of, you scapegoat the thing that's the most visibly identifiable, which isn't being gay, so it's got to be trans. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting, which dealing with knowing transgender people and people and seeing documentaries and stuff as well. I don't actually treat transgender people, or haven't up until this point, but I thought it was quite interesting that the only time that Michael Caine's Bobby took over is when he would get sexually aroused. And if you ever talk to anyone who's transgendering, if it's male to female, whenever they get aroused, it sickens them. Or female to male, when they have their menstruation, apparently sickens them. They get really upset with it because it's like their body betraying them. So I thought that they might have gotten that bit slightly right. I mean, in a disproportionate viewing of it, but I think that they got the kind of understanding right there. But I do think that, I don't think that this actually set transgender politics forward at all. If anything, it might have set them slightly back a bit. So I mean, I think it's interesting that with his character, there's Michael. Like, I saw that Michael Caine was sort of, to me, I kind of knew right away. I was like, oh yeah, he's probably going to be the one who is doing this, because there was sort of an underlying femininity about his character anyway. It wasn't overly masculine. So there's something about his character that I was like, oh, well, maybe he's this character. I got a little confused, like towards the end, when Liz comes in and tries to get or tries to get the log to see who the person was that checked in. Like, that was all really confusing. But then when you see the killer come out and is coming after her, but then you see another one outside the window, I was like, what is going on? That was a shocker. I was like, what's happening? And then you realize it was just a detective. So it's kind of cool, like, how he did that juxtaposition. Like, is there two killers? Is the killer trying to kill the son and trying to kill her? Like, what's going on?
Well, that was cool. I thought it was the guy she slept with in the cab for a while. I thought was the killer.
Yeah,
and you're like, how did she get on the subway so fast? If the cab driver knocked her out, and you're like, oh, he knocked out the detective. Everything made sense there at the end. I like that.
Yeah, but it was still like, oh my God, is there two killers? Because I was like, there's someone outside attacking the son, and then there's someone on the inside. I'm like, okay, now I'm really confused. What's going on?
Well, the interesting thing is that Susanna Clem, or the detective, basically she also played Michael Caine in drag. So sometimes that would be her dressed as Michael Caine in drag.
Oh, that's really funny.
In some scenes and stuff like this, and then they would show her as a detective at the same time. So because they cast someone who is the same body frame as Michael Caine, the same height and everything, but I guess with more natural blonde hair. I would think.
I wondered though too, like at points, like just looking at it, was Michael Caine actually wearing a mask? Because it looks almost like he almost looked plastic, or the scenes look like a mask, basically, to me.
All I can say is that I'm not quite sure how long Nancy Allen was in that room in her black brassiere and her lingerie, because he was able to get in full makeup.
Yeah,
I know.
And get on his clothes.
Costume change,
So she basically is very crap at looking for anything. So as a word of warning, if you need something found quickly, you might not want to call Nancy Allen, because your chances are it'll take a long time before she found it.
Brian De Palma direct. His pacing is so slow, man.
I quite like his pacing. How I got into Brian De Palma is I saw a film called Obsession, which was, I was spending the summer with my dad, and Obsession was on the loop on HBO at the time. And I watched it over and over with Jenny Bourgeois and Cliff Robertson. And I really liked that film a lot. And then after that, I started, then I saw Carrie and all the other films and started collecting his stuff.
Sisters is really good.
Oh, yeah. We're covering actually Sisters later on in the year. So, but I quite like that kind of slow pacing, because Alfred Hitchcock's pacing is always a bit slow like that. But I love the way they just lets the camera tell the story. He lets the camera swoop around, and I like the split screens, and I quite like all that. today I'm not sure you can get away with all that. I don't think there's a patience nowadays for that kind of filmmaking. But that's what I quite like about it. I like it's all over the top. I mean, I have to admit, it is over the top. Whether you're watching, Phantom of the Paradise, or or if you're watching, Body Double or anything like that, it is all very over the top. So, but I quite like it because it is a change of pace to watch a film like that. So, beyond the quick editing. Sometimes quick editing, I get to a point where it's like, okay, if I see any more quick editing, I'm gonna have epilepsy somewhere along the way. So,
I know you in a flash. It was funny, the little memories that she would have, and this little flashbacks. Like, first of all, when she drops the glove, I was like, seriously, you did not see yourself drop that glove. That could have been a little bit more subtle. Like, then she's like, what did I do with my glove? Huh. And then she like flashes back and, oh wait, he has a glove. It was like, yeah, it's kind of comical.
Did you notice, like, when what was quite funny is, like, when she's making out her shopping list for Thanksgiving, or I think it's good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I forgot about
that. Oh yeah.
Yes, she's writing, and she's got very good handwriting. I'll give her that. But she's writing her list, and she sees the guy checking her out, and she writes, "Pick up a turkey."
Yeah. And then the couple. What was the couple? The couple was something too, because she saw the couple, and the guy's like groping the girl, and she's like, oh.
Yeah, it was like a really unsettling Mentos commercial.
Well, I guess she just was not happy with the fact that she wasn't. Well, the whole point is that, housewife gets bored with sex life. Housewife goes out and looks, then finds, turns into a shit show after that.
I mean, I don't think she was actually looking for sex. I think she was just wasting time, but it kind of found her, which is, she acted on it. I don't know if it did seem like she was, I would say this is out of character for her, because she wasn't, even though she went with the flow, in the cab and stuff like this, when she got up, and she didn't feel like she was comfortable with what she did. So I'm assuming this probably was like the first time this happened. I don't think she was known to like go out there. And,
but then she kind of toyed with like the note when she was writing, and almost like, oh, I kind of want to do this again. Then she takes a note, and then she crumples it up, and then she just writes, that one liner, and then that's when she finds a note, and it's like, oh, and it's like, what did I do? And then I like that the thing that brings her back is her ring, the fidelity, right? Her marriage, it's like, oh, I gotta go get this ring. I can't go home, and in a way, that's what kills her in a way, because if she left
the ring.
Yeah, if she would have left it, would that have happened?
I don't understand why she took the ring off and set it by the bedstand anyway, though. It's just like,
but isn't when people have infidelity in a relationship and they are married, isn't what you normally see? Don't they normally take the ring off?
Not put it by the bedstand while you're banging the guy that's like, I mean, that's like an afterthought, don't you think?
I mean, she forgot her panties. She forgot her ring.
Did she leave her panties in the cab?
Yeah. She's like, oh.
Manhattan and look for this.
It's like, I'm going to have the drip dry for the whole day.
Oh.
I mean, the thing is, that's why, because of all those kind of things, I'm saying that this is probably like the first time this has ever happened. I mean, who has a one-night stand and leaves a note? You know what I mean? You kind of just get out.
I usually grabbed my shoes and my clothes and snuck out as best as I could. I hope I never see the motherfucker again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm gone. Tell them you're gone.
It's normally like in a drunken haze going, who the fuck are you? What have I just done? And you're like, get out of there.
By the way, I love when this is happening, and Liz basically stop, like opens the elevator. The other guy like takes off. So he's such a wuss. He's like, he sees this happen. He's like, and I'm gone. And Liz is like, wait, hold on, let me. And she's like trying to help the situation, and then like kind of gets pulled into it. So I actually liked her motivation. She was actually one of my favorite characters, because she could have just been like, I'm out of here, I'm not dealing with this. But she kind of stuck through that, and was, the cop is judging her, and she's like, you're not going to judge me. I do what I do, and you don't judge me.
I love how you've got a housewife who has, like, she's got no control over her sexuality at all and gets butchered. And then you've got this other woman who is completely, this is a third wave feminist, writ large. She's totally got her shit under control, and she's the one who ends up saving the day. And there's just this sort of a juxtaposition. You've got a mom who can't take care of a kid because she's acting like a hooker, and then the hooker who becomes the kid's mom.
Oh, that's true.
So
yeah, true.
I mean, I love Nancy Allen. I just wish we see more of her. Every time I see her in something, I loved her in Carrie. I loved her.
RoboCop.
RoboCop. I mean, every time you see her, it's just like, why don't we see more of her? I mean, I think that once she divorced Brian De Palma, I think it stilted her career a little bit. Yeah. I'm not quite. I mean, they're very good friends because she still talks fondly of them. Apparently, they're still friends, but for some reason, she's kind of Hollywood in reverse. Normally, it's like you'll get someone like, let's say, Katie Holmes. They marry like Tom,
right,
and then you never see Katie Holmes again until she gets divorced, or Nicole Kidman, where she flourished after the divorce. Like all of a sudden, it's like you can't get rid of her. That ice cream's never gonna melt. But she kind of flourished under Brian De Palma. But then outside of RoboCop, she kind of disappeared.
She did.
And the documentaries on Dressed to Kill, the Blu-ray editions, I mean, she still looks bloody good. She looks a bit more like Mary Louise Parker's mom, but she still looks
Yeah.
And Angie Dickinson, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, she's in her 40s here, mid-40s.
Yeah.
Which, she still had a very sexual in her own being and stuff like this. So, I mean, overall, it was an interesting movie.
Yes, it was.
So let's go to our final thoughts. So, John, what are your final thoughts of Homicidal and Dressed to Kill?
I like both of the films. I mean, it was something, again, I'm glad, Keith, you had suggested these films. It definitely made me see the homage to other films that I saw before, like I mentioned, American Psycho and Basic Instinct. I actually love that the characters themselves were fleshed out in a way, and like some of the they're crazy, of course. What's the from Homicide, I can't think of her name now, Emily. Emily was definitely one that in herself was a character of a character, and I just really appreciated the films. I like that it carries with the theme that we were doing with Psycho, and seeing sort of the nuances and how these directors sort of play off of each other is sort of now like I can take a step back and say, oh, I can see how each has appreciated and sort of rewarded the other for their contributions to film.
And which film did you prefer, Homicide or Dressed to Kill?
I actually liked Dressed to Kill more because it made me think of American Psycho, and I love American Psycho, Basic Instinct. I like that modern noir. I love noir in general, but I like the modern noir and the approach.
So basically you're sick and perverted. Okay.
Pretty much.
What about yourself, Matthew? What are your final thoughts of Homicidal and Dressed to Kill?
I want to see remakes of both of them with Caitlyn Jenner starring.
All right.
Woman of the Year. Yay. And which film did you prefer, Homicidal or Dressed to Kill?
Dressed to Kill by far. It's got a spot in my heart because I used to watch it as a kid all the time. It was one of those naughty movies, that was really fun to watch when you were young.
And being naughty.
And it's a little more bloodier. Yeah. Well, Homicidal was pretty bloody too. But.
Just blood in grays is not the same as blood in Technicolor. And
yeah, but that head rolling off scene was epic.
That was cool.
Oh, I actually was going to say, you mentioned it, Dario Argento for Dressed to Kill, and Dario Argento was actually on the set of Dressed to Kill, and he got on very well with Brian De Palma, and he offered Nancy Allen a role in Inferno, which because of the underwater sequences she turned down, which is a little bit of tidbit information. So, and what about yourself, Will? What are your thoughts on Homicidal and Dressed to Kill?
I'm so glad I actually got to watch these kind of back to back and see how they play off of each other. Like John said, I've seen them both a number of times, and they sort of form a Janus face when you stack them right up next to each other. You've got female, playing male parts and male parts playing female parts. And one begins with a really bloody scene, and then the other ends with the throat slashing that's just super intense and super Argento. Thanks for thinking to put the two together. They're just they pair really well.
And which one did you prefer, Homicidal or Dressed to Kill?
I'm gonna go with Homicidal just because I love for William Castle. The two movies are both really super good. But there's just something about his sort of the stamp he leaves on everything. That sort of who is the guy who did Plan 9 from Outer Space? You know who I'm thinking of?
Ed Wood.
Ed Wood.
Ed Wood.
So William Castle is what Ed Wood was sort of trying to do, but I feel like he did it, I love all of the feel of all the Castle's films, and so it'll always be him over De Palma for me.
Right. And what about you? So, Vicky,
Wood did Glenda, another transgender movie.
Which one? Oh, Glenda, yeah.
Glenda.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah.
God, I saw that movie at the Scala here, and it was off my head. It was great. And what about yourself, Vicky? What are your thoughts about Homicidal and Dressed to Kill?
Homicidal? Well, the beginning of the movie, I was just like, what the fuck? Didn't know what to think about it. I enjoyed it. It was rather different. After you get past the teeth and everything else, teeth, that really messed with my head. Dressed to Kill, I liked it because I like, one, it was a little more exciting, I guess, more fast action. There was just more going on. So it kept my attention a whole lot more.
And which one did you prefer?
Probably Dressed to Kill, just because I like a little more gore, I mean, I like the head thing like Matthew did in Homicidal, but I like a little, I don't know, I'm kind of like, I love my violence and my scary movies and whatnot and my thrillers. So I would have to say Dressed to Kill I liked a lot. I liked the plot a lot more. I like Michael Caine because I think he's a great actor. I think it was well done. I mean, I just like there's a whole lot more going on, and I've got an ADHD brain, as you well know, and so I need to stuff going on all the time to absorb input. So probably Dressed to Kill for me.
And for myself, I look at I'm a huge William Castle fan, but I'm also a huge Brian De Palma film fan, and I've watched both these films numerous times, and I own copies of them, and I do bring them out every year to 2 years to watch because I am perverted that way, and I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. But I also like, but for me, what I tend to do when I do view a film or people come over and we're gonna watch a film together, I kind of divide films up by what kind of film going person they are. Now, if there's someone who loves film and they're looking for something that has a lot of camera angles and flourishes to it, and
right,
makes you think, I always will put Dressed to Kill on. But if there's someone who just likes cinema on a side, and they like to see, and I want to show them something that's a bit different or a bit shocking, I'll show them Homicidal. So I kind of viewed my public like that, or my public, my friends, I should say. They're not my public, they're my friends. My ego is just so big, but I guess I think that both films deliver what they say they're going to deliver, but they also give you a little bit more, and they actually make a lot of questions in your mind about certain things. And they, I think Dressed to Kill, I think before I saw this film, again, I saw this film on HBO, and I did see it, and I didn't even know what transgender was, at that time. I mean, I think 1980, I would have been 15,
I never
sort of thing.
Back then either.
So I didn't really know, and when I saw Homicidal, I mean, that kind of blew my mind when I first saw that. And I remember the first time I saw this, and then when it came out that she was a he who was pretending to be a she, and the whole category that whole brought up to. I mean, that really like blew my mind. And I mean, I had to watch it over and over again. And I saw Homicidal the first time with my grandmother, and she sat down and explained to me what transvestitism was, which bless her heart, I love her dearly, and I'm sad that she's gone. But she, growing up later on, and then embracing the world that I ended up embracing, she was totally off the base with it. But anyway,
it's like, no, Grandma, you're wrong. Sorry.
But it was sweet and endearing, and it's one of those conversations I hold dear to my heart to the day I die. But yeah, I can't really pick between the two. For me, it would be, it depends what mood I'm in. If I'm into like a really slocky kind of black and white kind of mood, Homicidal all the way. If I want something that, when I go to one of my Brian De Palma modes, where I sit there and just watch every film he did, there's Dressed to Kill. So I can't really pick the two, but I appreciate both of them on their own merits.
A special thank you to our guests, Will Mailer and Matthew Brockmeyer, for joining us. Can you both please let our fans know where to find us? Or find you, I should say.
Sure. www.matthewbrockmeyer.com. And I'm on Facebook as Humboldt Lycanthrope, and on Instagram as Humboldt Lycanthrope, and Twitter as Humboldt Lycan.
Nice. And you, Will?
I'm not all that active on social media anymore. I do have a Twitter account. It's at Will Millar, the number 4. I probably tweet about once every 6 to 8 weeks, but you're welcome to go check it out if you want. Honestly, I stay pretty active by cranking out books and stories as often as I can. I got 4 books on Amazon right now. You can look for them there. And if you want to reach out to me, you can through In Advent of the Zombie Holocaust.com. It's In Advent of the Zombie Holocaust.blogspot. That's probably about the easiest way to get a hold of me. I go and check messages there periodically, but that's pretty much it.
Cool beans.
Nice. Yeah. So as Keith had mentioned earlier, make sure to sign up to our newsletter, which you can go to our website at llpodcast.com to not only sign up, but you can also check out our past episodes, become a patron, and read our reviews of books to screen and everything in between. When life is a drag, put on your Sunday best and paint the town red. When in doubt, accessories are a must, a skinny belt, a clutch purse, or maybe a cleaver perhaps. Any of these items have you standing out in a crowd. After all, it's a cutthroat world out there, and one must always look their best. Though couture can be a killer to wear sometimes, it's a small price to pay when you're putting your best foot or knife forward. And if you're still uncertain about these fashion do's or don'ts, we will be finishing up the month of The Clothes Make the Killer with Alfred Hitchcock's Film Frenzy. Until then, we would like to thank you for downloading, liking, and sharing the Literary License Podcast. Thanks for joining us, gang. Bye.
Sure you want to know about this?
Yeah, it's giving me some wonderful new ideas for a science project. I mean, instead of building a computer, I could build a woman. Out of me.
Great idea. In that case, I'll give you all the details.
I slip into my shoes and slide into it all night. I'm on the loose, you're in my sights. You know it's gonna hurt you, but it's just no use. You fall in love, they always do. And I'm waiting for the next one to fall. I'm dressed to kill, and you know that I will. We're dancing in the dark with my hands around your heart. Our hands will roll and blood will spill. But how can you resist when baby I am dressed to kill?
Connect.
What's that?
Oh, you know, we take your penis and slice it down the middle.
It's all in vain. You wear the scars, the lipstick stains, and he can't even see he's just on another one. It's far too late, he's too far gone. And I'm waiting for the next one to fall. I'm dressed to kill, and you know that I will. We're dancing in the dark with my hands around your heart. Our hands will
castration, plastic reconstruction, and the formation of an artificial vagina, a vaginoplasty to those in the know.
Want to come home with me? I love the company.
Wouldn't Mike mind?
Well, Mike's out of town on a business trip. We got plenty of room.
Great. I could sure use the vacation.